Everybody, it is October the 8th and we are live for the view from the top. We have got an amazing show for you today. There is going to be so much good stuff we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be talking about an area that we've actually not talked about before, and it's an area that I think is really vital that people in the mobility world are aware of. We're going to be talking about not mobility as such, but about onboarding. We're going to be talking about where compliance gets strategic. We're going to be talking about I-9s if you're in the US or equivalent elsewhere around the world. We're going to be talking about onboarding, and we're going to be talking about the future of legal technology. So loads of things that we're covering. I'm so excited. We got backstage, not one, not two, but three people from Fragomen's new WorkRight unit, and that is Robert Horsley, Dan Brown and Darren Gibson. So from all over the world, we've got experts, and of course we've got Julia Onslow Cole, and we've got our wonderful change maker, Susanna Ramirez. So a great show for you today, but you know how it works, everybody. Join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us what's been going on in your world, where you are, what's new. We want to find out what you think. We are live right now on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube, and we are also available as a podcast on Spotify. Now, a number of you, of course, do want to get your CPE codes, and we have CPE codes for you. We have CPE codes from Worldwide ERC. We've got the GMS and the CRP codes. We've got many thanks to our good friends at Worldwide ERC for those codes, but also we've got codes from HRCI and SHRM, and many thanks to our good friends at Rocket Mortgage for those. So that's that. And then next week we're back, and next week we're going to be talking about moving relocation management companies from being relocation management to revolution. We're going to be talking about how technology is reshaping relocation services. A fascinating show we've got lined up for you next week. But what's been going on around the world in our industry? Who's been promoted? Who's got a new job? And if you're looking, what job opportunities are out there at the moment? Let's see what we can find out. Let's see what the news is of the last 7 days. So there we have it. Congratulations to everyone who's got a new job. Congratulations to everyone who's been promoted. And if you're looking, there are loads of jobs out there. And if for next week you got a piece of news you want to share, maybe you've got a new job, you've been promoted, maybe you've got a job opportunity that you want to share with the world, maybe you've got some other bit of news that you want to share with the world, let us know and we will do whatever we can to help promote your bit of news to our amazing industry. Now, of course, we always have an immigration update, and as ever, we've got the wonderful Julia Onslow Cole, who this week is in Dubai. So you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome to the view from the top stage, Julia Onslow Cole. Hey Julia, how you doing?
Hi, very well, thanks.
How's Dubai?
It's really nice, really warm.
Cool. I believe you were at a great event yesterday.
Yes, had a really good event with GME yesterday. Saw lots of regional HR leaders. It was really very interesting, and it's great to be here today with Dan and Darren and Robert from Fragomen. So it's fantastic.
I know it's a real Fragomen makeover today. So, Julia, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world.
Yes, so I was thinking of just doing a normal sort of update across the region, and then because of what we're going to be hearing about later about compliance, I thought I'd just sort of pick out some compliance hot topics. And interesting thing at the round table with HR leaders yesterday, they were saying that compliance was really one of their sort of hot issues at the moment. And one of the things that I just wanted to mention was Saudi and the Regional Headquarters Initiative. And this was something, Brian, you'll recall that we talked about on several episodes to get people ready for the fact that if you wanted to bid in Saudi for any big government contracts, you had to show that you had a regional headquarters in Saudi. And so over several weeks, we prepared everybody on the show for this because it was rather difficult to work out at the beginning what the requirements were. But in essence, when it came into force, you had to show that you had at least 15 people in an entity in Saudi that was not a commercial entity, and that you transferred at least 3 of your C-suite to Saudi. Didn't have to be in Riyadh, but somewhere in Saudi Arabia. And you had to show that at least 2 of your countries in the region were reporting in to this entity. And initially, the government thought that they would only attract, a few companies, but it was actually a very successful initiative. And very quickly, the numbers went up to over 600. Now, what's happening is that the Labour and Immigration authorities are now having a really good look at these regional headquarters. And they're actually looking on social media. They're saying, well, you say this person's in the C-suite, but actually in social media, it's quite clear they're living in Dubai. Or you're saying that these countries are reporting in, but that's not what we're seeing from other documentation. And so there is a big drive now to investigate the regional headquarters. So that's something that is.
And does that come with penalties?
Everything comes with penalties, but we haven't got to that stage yet. But I think there's just a lot of investigations going on. What happens in Dubai is that they publish immigration violations. They don't actually publish names, but between January and June, there were over 200,000 violations.
Wow.
So this could be people, who are on unauthorized work permits, don't have the right to work, which is obviously what my colleagues are going to be talking about. But the key thing is also to make sure that people are on the right visa. You understand why they're going to Saudi and you put them on the right visa. So if they're working, you put them on a visa that allows them to work. And also you're following to the letter the rules on Saudiization. So there's a general overview of Saudiization, but there's sector-specific Saudiization. So HR, for example, you can't have anyone that is not a Saudi national. But recently they really increased the Saudiization numbers for pharmacy, for dentistry, for accounting. So you've really got to, keep up with these. Now, I just wanted to turn to 2 other countries, and one was Iraq. We're doing a lot of work in Iraq at the moment.
I think it's the first time we've talked about Iraq on the show, but great one.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, we could do a bit more because I'm going to do a webinar soon on Iraq. Very, very interesting things happening in Iraq. But people are getting caught out with immigration non-compliance. So you used to be able to get a visa on arrival, and now you have to apply for an e-visa, which is great because Iraq's trying to digitalize its platforms, but unfortunately it's not fully digitalized. So you have to get an e-visa, but also you have to fill in loads of paperwork. And the really difficult thing is that you also have to complete all the social security. And what's happened is that many people are moving people quite quickly into Iraq, and they're not registered their expats with the social security platform. Now, if you haven't done that, because it's digital, the 2 systems are now linked up, and you can actually, it stops you getting a work permit or stops you getting a renewal. So it's a kind of top tip if you've got people in Iraq you must get them on the Social Security platform. And finally, I wanted to say something about Egypt. Again, we're very, very busy in Egypt. There's a lot of companies setting up in Egypt, a lot of moves in the region, Saudi companies setting up in Egypt. And there's an issue there with they don't call it Social Security, it's called social insurance. Now, what happens is that there's a lot of paperwork you have to fill in, and you have to give it to the Egyptian authorities, and they register it. It's a very, very heavy manual process, but we've had a few clients who've had raids on their premises, and they've been asked to show all the physical paperwork. And in fact, the paperwork's perfectly in order. But when they had handed it to the government to register, it hadn't been registered. In fact, we have one client who, when we investigated it all the paperwork was in a drawer in someone's office in Egypt. So it's really important that clients not just give in the paperwork, but actually keep refreshing the portal, keep checking that all the records are updated. Because again, if this doesn't happen, you can have a fine, and you can actually sort of have one on the spot. So, the region is really full of these different compliance issues with immigration, social security or social insurance. And, now is the time not to be non-compliant.
That's fascinating update. And obviously what you're saying about what's going on in the region, actually, those sorts of issues around compliance are worldwide. And I know we're going to be talking about right to work and what's going on in the rest of the world in a few minutes. But before we do, we're going to bring our change maker on to talk to us. And I'm so excited. We have backstage Susana Ramirez from Honeywell, a real inspirational leader in our industry. So you know how it works. As we say goodbye and thank you to Julie Onslow Cole, and we welcome to our stage Susana Ramirez. Please, everybody, hit that heart button, hit the like button, and hit the applause button. Susana, it is so exciting to have you on the show. You are an inspiration in our industry. And everybody, I'm going to embarrass you a bit, Susana, because I found this on your LinkedIn profile, but I want to share it with the world. Susana always brings something to the party: sharp insight, stellar people management, constructive feedback, and impactful thought leadership. A true leader who elevates and improves her team. So you are much loved, Susana. So
thank you.
Let's start. Tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and how you got into this wonderful world of mobility.
Well, I think that most of our audience is going to relate to this, but it was really by chance.
Isn't it always?
It is like that always, right? 20 years ago, when I started doing mobility, it was really by chance. A friend of mine honestly invited me to an interview and said, I think that you'd be good for the part. And the person that interviewed me back then was so passionate about mobility that I fell in love right there, right now. And 20 years later, here I am leading my amazing mobility team at Honeywell. It's been quite the journey, many different roles, different capacities, but always in the mobility space. Very excited to see how the mobility industry is also changing.
And I mean, I think most people know the company Honeywell, so we don't need to really sort of focus on that. But tell us about mobility at Honeywell. Tell us about what it's like.
Mobility at Honeywell is, I would say, like a great breakfast. You never know what it's going. You always have surprises, and it's very variable. I would say that our focus is mainly compliance. We have a lot of people that we move for projects. That's where our big focus is. We do have some traditional mobility, but really project mobility is our core.
Okay. And I know that you're one of our passionate change makers. And if anybody out there is interested in being a change maker, then do let us know. It's a collection of senior mobility professionals who get together. They give us at Beniva a little bit of input when we're developing technology, but they share information amongst themselves and discuss. But Susanna, tell us a bit about your experience of being a change maker and what you love about it.
It has been amazing. As you know, I came back to the mobility space last year when I took on this role, and I had spent probably 2 years outside of the industry. Honestly, change makers was what brought me back into everything. The different chats, the different conversations, all of the mobility professionals that are part of these amazing network are always willing, always engaging, and bringing new ideas so that we can move forward the industry in the way that we need to move it forward. So it's been quite amazing to be part of this community.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because I sort of see that, the change makers are talking about issues, often it's about technology and they're helping Beniva as we develop technology. But also sometimes it's just conversations on, and maybe in some way they're the more important ones, where people are talking about themselves. And just a few weeks ago, obviously we had a major change on H1Bs, and the Benivo Changemaker channel we have just went wild with people saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And this sort of sharing of information was so helpful to so many people. But the way we say thank you to our change makers is that we say to our change makers, if there's a charity that you would like us to support, any charity in the world, then we will support it for you in thanks for being a change maker. And Susanna, tell us about your charity. What did you choose?
Well, I chose the Habitat for Humanity on the Greater Matthews area, and this is an area that is very close to our home, and it's a charity that is close to our heart. All of our family participate. We actually have a fundraising that is coming up on October 30th. If I can do the announcement right there.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
We participate very closely. For those that you might not be familiar, it's a charity that partners with different families to help build or improve a place that they can call home, and help them find stability, security, for a better future. So it's very close to our heart. We have been part of the community for a while, and we represent this charity on this one.
Well, I'm so excited that we are able to support you, and that you in turn are able to support your chosen charity. Susanna, it's been amazing having you on the show. We're going to move on.
Thank you, Ryan.
And we've got an announcement about a Beniva announcement, but in particular, we're going to be talking about our top 100 list this year, which is already open, and we're already getting nominations rolling in. And this year's list is all about the top 100 AI champions. AI is, of course, everywhere this year. So we're going to bring on, we're going to say goodbye to you, Susanna, and we're going to bring on stage Tally. So you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, and hit the applause button. Tally, good to see you.
Hello, Brian. Hello. It's been a week and we have quite a few nominations, so we're almost at the halfway to the 100. But keep nominating. I'm going to share the link, and I want to remind everyone in the audience that this year, not only that you can nominate your colleagues for brilliant AI champions, but you can also nominate yourself. So this year we opened it also for self-nomination. So if you think that you're a good AI champion, please nominate and please share a prompt with us. So our goal is not only to recognize the top 100 AI champions of the industry, but we also want to get from these champions some really cool prompts so we can create a library of prompts for global mobility.
That's amazing. So we will share ideas with the community, and we're going to be learning from each other. So if you've done something cool with AI, maybe you're using it with a special use case, or you've just got a special prompt you're using, or anything else that you're doing, let us know, because we at Benevo love AI, and we love people who love AI. So if you love AI...
love AI. We also did some cool things with AI recently, and maybe this is the time to also mention, you know, what's behind you. There's MI for that, so the AI for global mobility, MI, and we had a crazy reveal of the MI, and due to the audience response and request to do more reveals, because we're not recording these ones. This one you have to be there. I'm going to share links to more reveals that we're going to have in the coming months. But Brian, I also wanted, just before we move to the main discussion, I wanted to also invite all our corporate members and friends who want to meet us to join us. Anyone who's coming to WERC at the end of the month, please join us, come to see us. We have a corporate-only breakfast, and we're going to have Juan Carlos Gonzalez from Microsoft join. Yes. It's going to be brilliant. And we're going to talk a lot about AI there too.
Love Juan Carlos. He's a real thought in our industry.
Yes. So it's a chance to meet him. It's a chance to meet our people there. Lori, Meredith, and Nitzan are going to be there. But if you can't make it to the breakfast and you're still going to be in WERC, I'm going to share the link, and you're going to have space there to also schedule one-to-one with them. But anyway, just come to say hello.
Absolutely. Okay, Tali, thank you so much. We're going to move on now, because I know everybody's really interested to be hearing about how we can make compliance strategic, and indeed how you have to make compliance strategic in the current environment of right to work checks. So we have backstage, we have Robert Horsley, Dan Brown, and Darren Gibson, all from Fragomen WorkRight. So everybody, you know how it works. I know I've said this before. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, and hit that applause button. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So let's start. Robert, I know you've been on the show before, but I'll start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself, where you are in the world, your role.
Wow, fun. Fun just to watch the show from start to finish here. As you all know, I've been with Fragomen forever, but I'm very much focused right now on our WorkRight tool, which we'll tell you a little bit more about. I find myself in Silicon Valley. In California. I think this is a fun group because we are, between Julia and the other two of us, we're all over the world today.
Absolutely. So we had Julia, who is from the UK but was out in Dubai. You're in the Valley. Darren, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey Brian, it's awesome to be with you today. As you can tell by the accent, I'm Australian. I'm actually based in Singapore today, so we're trying to get as many countries as we can. It's almost like country bingo. And I'm here for GME tomorrow, so it's not 2 a.m. in the morning. It's not quite that bad, but looking forward to the show.
Okay, and Dan, whereabouts are you?
Yeah, hi Brian. Thanks for having us on. I am in Washington D.C.
The center of everything, where it all happens. All the regulations come from.
That's right.
Okay, and how long have you been with Fragomen, Dan?
I've been with Fragomen since about 2012. Before I went into private practice, I had a fairly long stint in the government, both in the immigration agencies here in the United States.
Okay, so let's sort of start off with a bit of context here, and I shall continue with you, Dan. Why is compliance suddenly such a big issue? Or is it sudden? Or has it always been a big issue? What's going on?
it's always been a big issue, but I think the temperature is, just so much hotter today, for compliance, especially in, anything that touches on the immigration word, more and more across the world, but particularly here in the US right now, you're just seeing this huge uptick in an immigration compliance and enforcement by the government. And the, sort of like the political kind of fire around, immigration issues here in the United States makes ensuring compliance critical for, every employer, right? Like there's not just financial penalties that could be involved if you're found to be out of compliance, but really huge reputational risks that employers face if the government comes calling.
Yeah, so Robert, tell us about some of those reputational risks. I mean, what are the issues that companies are facing?
Well, I think what's interesting is I-9s have, in the U.S. and as it's expanded around the world, it's all, like Dan said, it's always been a big issue, right? It's always been something certain people have focused in on that really knew more about it. But at the same time, from a larger organization perspective, it's kind of the hidden little liability, the hidden little secret that's been commoditized. So I think we really got involved in this by being the immigration experts. People come to us and say, "Hey, can you look at this? Can you take a peek and help us have a good policy?" But it was never anything that could really scale. And it was like Groundhog Day, actually. You'd help people figure it out, and you go back again in 6 months, and it would all still be, kind of the same mess it started with, because it's not something people really want to stay involved in. People want to get involved in I-9s, help fix a problem, and then kind of branch out and do maybe more interesting things. So we set up to help put together a program that would help us scale, and not at a commodity level, but really at the level that the government would see that companies were taking it very seriously.
Okay, and this is a global issue, but also the world of work has changed, because it used to be, of course, that if you were getting a job, you go into the office and you'd show them your documents. But these days you might be hiring somebody who is 1,000, 5,000 miles away. And we actually did a poll. We asked I'd be interested to see what people say, but we did a poll. We said, what is your biggest challenge with I-9? Obviously the same in other countries, but right to work compliance. We gave people 4 choices: changing regulations, remote verification, tracking and storage, and employee errors. Now, I know you might say that they're all an issue, but we are asking for what's the main one. And this is what our poll showed. It actually showed, well, actually nobody said that employee errors was the main issue. But aside from that, it was pretty split. But the interesting one to me, and I'd like to build you on this, Darren, is that actually remote working, remote verification was a huge issue. So Darren, tell us about that from your perspective. Remote verification, what's the issue here and how are people dealing with it? Or how
Brian, I think it's got a lot to do with also the population that you've asked on the answer that you would get. Because I would be sitting here saying all the above. If I'm looking at it from a global level, I would actually answer all the above.
Yeah, I didn't allow that as an answer. Yeah. You had to go for one.
Come on, I'm trying to break the rules already. But I think from a verification, I think where we're seeing most of the compliance and challenges, because the I-9 process in the US is quite mature, and employees and employers are getting used to it. I think when you look at areas such as the UK, where they've got positive identification that has to happen, it has to be happening on site. I think that poll would probably be skewed a lot to some of the challenges that are happening in the UK and in Europe at the moment. That's just a gut feel without having looked at it, where you've got to have somebody actually front up to an office before their first day, and actually verify their documents with an employer. And as you said, it's in the days of today where you've got digital nomads, you've got remote working. It's a real challenge to make that happen. And then how do you do that using a different tool? It's different technology that is both compliant from a government regulatory perspective and also backs onto those other areas that, okay, not only have I seen the documentation, I've stored it and I've got a way to manage it if I get checked by a particular government. So it's not going away. It's going to be a problem going forward, and it's about how you just find a smart solution to solve for that problem.
Okay.
Brian, if I could piggyback for a second, because I think the reason people are saying remote is the biggest issue is that, to go back to COVID changed everything. Everybody had kind of tried and true practices for getting it done in person, your first day, orientation, but just like all of onboarding changed during COVID, everything became much more remote, right? And the I-9 rules caught up about a year ago and allowed for more people to do remote verifications. But there's a whole set of rules that you have to kind of comply with. So what we've really tried to do is try to keep up with what's possible. So make sure everything's compliant at the end of the day. That's where we start. But we've actually tried to find ways to make it easier to do. So we've actually offered a solution where you can come online and complete the I-9 yourself, and then somebody will show up to do that virtual verification within a minute. So you can literally get this I-9 done in a compliant way within 5 minutes at 2 in the morning if you want to do. And that's quite revolutionary.
So at 2 in the morning, you can do it, and there's somebody coming online, presumably in a time zone where they're working, to sort it out.
24/7, 362.
Wow, that is incredible, Robert. But I mean, I just want to ask a bit of background to this, because I mean, this show, of course, is aimed primarily at global mobility professionals, and historically, global mobility professionals haven't really been involved with onboarding it. That's been sitting in talent, but then equally, they weren't involved with business travel until a few years ago. So tell me why understanding the WorkRight and the I-9 process is important for global mobility professionals.
I mean, from my perspective, it's a great opportunity for global mobility people to understand more, because ultimately it's giving you transparency into the things you may not know. Everybody around the world is, for the most part, self-reported why they, in countries where there's not a prescribed process, they've self-reported why it is and how they can work, right? This gives them a tool to now have visibility into the reality and the check that somebody actually has met those requirements. I think the other piece of it is that while the mobility people, and all of us here are mobility people at the end of the day, if there's an immigration consequence to be paid, we're going to be the ones paying it, yet other people are the ones administrating the whole program. So you're really a stakeholder that's got a vested interest in doing all this right. So
because if there's a mess, we're the ones who've got to step in and help out. And Dan, if I can just bring
Brian, just one other point on it. I think it also is a really strategic arm into workforce planning, because this doesn't only include foreign or assignees, right? Every person who starts with an organization has to go through some form of employment verification WorkRight check. I think the data that mobility can capture becomes an incredibly important angle in terms of when an organization starts looking at its strategic workforce planning, because the data, the information that you're getting on not only where people are working today, but where they could easily work in the future, means that you're providing data and insight to the strategic workforce planning function on the chess moves that organizations make with key individuals. And it's a factual base.
And similarly, like if you know the nationalities and the immigration statuses or what have you of the workforce, you can figure out, which technologies they can work on and be exposed to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe just from a mobility perspective, traditional mobility, as probably we knew it 20 years ago, it's becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. The idea of the traditional assignment, the typical rich 3 or 5 year assignment with a full package and tax equalization, that is increasingly for the birds, and that people are moving to new ways of working. And as a result, mobility's role is changing. As I said, mobility is increasingly involved in the compliance side of business travel. And I think what we're all saying is mobility should also be ready to be involved at a minimum in the compliance sides of just onboarding. And we talked about when things go wrong. Dan, I don't want to mention any names, but can you give us an example of the sort of things that could go wrong and what companies, the consequences and what companies should be doing?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a range of potential penalties and problems that could happen, right? Like, at the most basic level, you could suffer financial fines for having, either not having done the right to work check, not having completed the I-9, or having completed those improperly, using the wrong process or late. You might be subject of a government, either civil or criminal enforcement action, even up to having your workplaces raided if there's concerns about unauthorized workers at those locations. Similarly, you might face potential penalties like debarment if you're from federal, contracting with the local, the local national government, if you're found to have violated, some of these requirements as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing it. It's a global thing. I mean, Julia was talking about it, what's going on in the Middle East. But Darren, give us a feeling about what's going on around the world.
Brian, around the world
you put together, isn't it?
Sorry, just repeat the second part of that question.
I'm saying this is a global solution that Fragomen's put together.
So it certainly is. So it's one solution that covers the entire world. And just to build on what Dan said, and when you start talking about the size of fines that we're looking at, in the UK, it's up to £60,000 per illegal employee. Australia, it's up to 79,200 Australian dollars. I think Canada is approaching near $50,000. So these are the corporate penalties, and then it's the penalties to the individual as well. So it's gone well past a slap on the wrist. And when you start getting, it's not just one person. If you're getting 5, 10, 100 people at £60,000, it becomes a very expensive exercise. And I would not like to be the person going up to the head of risk of an organization and saying, oh, look, I'm sorry, can you please write a check? Because it's going to be a very awkward discussion. But on a global scale, the solution is there to design that no matter which country you're in, no matter where you're from, we should be able to go through and put a work verification platform in, a work verification, WorkRight solution in place for you, so that you'll be compliant in any and all jurisdictions around the world. And we think we're pretty unique in that, because I don't think there's anybody else that can do over 122 countries that we cover at the moment from a solution perspective. And wow, that's all built on the immigration knowledge of the firm.
It's amazing. Question for you, Robert. I mean, we're talking about using technology to aid compliance, but it's not just the good guys that have technology these days. What can companies do when maybe the documents that they're being asked to look at, maybe they've been manipulated, maybe they're forgeries? What can companies do to deal with, how I'll put it, when the bad guys use technology too?
Well, it is interesting. We all have gotten used to using technology for all the benefits, right? But there is the other side of the sword of how technology can be used. I do think one of the reasons we're very interested in this space is that we think that for so long they're old systems that have been put together. Everybody's always known you needed to have and be able to kind of prove that people have the right to work, but they're very commoditized, very simplistic approaches to how companies are proving that. So we saw the opportunity to really spend a lot of energy here just to embed ourselves into those processes. So our tool actually works hand integrated into onboarding tools and HRIS tools. We're not trying to be all things. We're trying to answer specific questions. And one of those is, does your person have the right to work? And make that very easy to accomplish within the workflows. I think I think Dan and prompted another one. Do you have the right to work on this contract? Do you have the right to work on this technology? And all the way back to what you're implying, are you really who you say you are? Right? Because that has gotten, if you really are looking around, there are people that are impersonating other people, even down to interviews. Are your documents for it? So we've taken what you can do in technology and been able to interrogate people using those methodologies and interrogate documents from an authenticity perspective, looking at things with more than just the human eye, with more than just the simple touch, but to use those same technologies back to answer those other questions as well. And I think that's what's brought the three of our energies to making this is a lot bigger deal than it used to be, both from a compliance standpoint and from the questions you can really interrogate at a much more scalable way. That's why I'm.
Look, it used to be the case, didn't it, that somebody would show you a document if you were an employee, and you'd look at it and say, oh, it looks like a passport, but nobody really, certainly the people doing the checks, didn't have the skills, to be honest, to actually say, is that really, really, really what it says it is? Because it would be somebody, typically a fairly junior person, who'd be looking at it and taking a photocopy and checking it. But so how's it different now? How's the world moved on? How does this technology work?
So again, it's a great question. And I do think it was the hot potato for a long time. You got involved in I-9s, maybe it was your first job within HR and you were looking to move, which was one of the reasons we had the Groundhog Day problem of you can train people, but they're up and moving to the next thing very quickly. And with rudimentary tools, it just, all that knowledge got left behind. I think the key to it is using, the digital networks that exist that many people haven't plugged into, and not just seeing this as a form, but see it as data, store it in the appropriate ways, and interrogate it appropriately. So that's exactly what we do. We fit into that workflow. We help collect the information, and then we help interrogate it during the process without stopping the process. And we interrogate it after the process or the form is completed, if you will, to give you kind of a sense of authenticity. That's the word I'm going to keep using. And you can do that using digital, whether it's OCI or AI, as you talk about. There are lots of different ways to approach it now if you start connecting all the technological dots. But the key is not to be on some other silo. You're doing this all within a workflow. So while it's complicated, you can still make it a 5-minute process, right? You can still not change how people are doing things. You just fit into that network. So I think, again, that's where the three of us are very proud of what we've done. And at the end of the day, not only are you left with a more compliant feeling, right? Like you have a better feeling about where you say, no, are you audit ready? But you also know how, as Darren was saying, now you have kind of a talent enablement tool as well. You've got much more data where you can answer other questions, not just ask questions, but you can start answering other questions.
And Brian, just to build on that, we're sitting there just to give you an understanding of the depth of what we look at. We've got a database or access to a database with over 13,500 different documents that can look at the documents. It looks at ratios on where things appear in documents, where there's the hologram is in the right space, date formats, to the millimeter of where things should be from the side or the top of a document. So bad actors will always be out there, and there will be forgers out there who will be able to beat anything that's out there. But we believe what we've got, we can go back and say we have got with a great level of certainty. The only system that's out there that actually has a live interface with any form of Department of Immigration is the Vivo solution in Australia, where you actually put in a passport number and it goes into the department and will either say yes or no. So there's no defined way to prove that something is or isn't a passport, but we believe the technology and the databases that we sit on means that you can go away with a 99.9% level of accuracy of what's been entered is actually correct.
So worst case scenario, you can then turn around if there is a problem and say, well, actually, we did more than enough to justify our processes. Whereas if someone is not using technology, they're open to the charge that they haven't actually taken reasonable care. I mean, is reasonable care the test that most governments take around the world?
Well, around the world, as things are evolving at the moment, things are being tested, the boundaries are being tested. So if you said, show me who has been fined for what, where and how, there's certain cases in Australia where people just haven't followed a process, and those people or those organisations have been fined. In terms of what is adequate, we'd like to say that we're going to hold ourselves to a very high standard, and we want to be able to help organisations identify, not just so they're compliant, but they can identify if people are bad actors trying to get into their organisation. And these are some of these tests that we put, the recognition of passports, documents, driver's license, a variety of different other documents, depending on where you are. I think it's a great way to say, because in most cases, unless you're a citizen, you're being asked for more than one document. So I think it's a very valid and strong way that if I'm an employer, I've got a very strong evidence background that, Brian is Brian. I've seen Brian's passport, and Brian can actually work in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robert, if you're sitting in mobility and you're watching this show, what should you be doing tomorrow? What's the conversation you should be having with your colleagues in the onboarding group? And how should you be positioning it? What's the message for mobility professionals?
Well, I'm gonna cross my finger and come right back to that. But Dan, I know you wanted to add a little bit to the.
Yeah, you had asked a question about it's a standard of care, and right. So I'll just point to an example recently here in the United States. An employer in the United States, they have the E-Verify system, which is actually a government system that can tell you whether somebody's work authorized.
That's not mandatory, is it?
It's not mandatory, but even though it's a government system, it's not foolproof at all. And so, right, it doesn't catch identity theft. And so in the last 6 months, we've seen employers who use E-Verify get raided and have hundreds of employees get arrested by the government, because they were even able to get past E-Verify because they didn't just submit false documents. They're using the real identity, of a real person.
Yeah, and I've got a question that's come. Actually, no, let me go back to Robert. Just deal with that question, Robert. What should mobility be doing? And what's the conversation they should be having now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you are very much, mobility people are concerned stakeholders, right? Or should be. I think, to go back, this is an area that's been there for a long time. It's been highly commoditized and simplified, and it needs to keep up, right? We were just talking about things are going to continue to change and get more sophisticated, right? So I think the real question is, do you go back and find out who is responsible for keeping this information, right? Who does own the I-9 program? It's probably in HR ops or somewhere, right? And to ask them, are you audit ready? Have you kept up? And obviously not as a colleague, that you're concerned, right? That are we ready for this new sophisticated, approach that isn't, just something that we stopped thinking about because we thought we had it cured. And I will tell you, that is a prevalent feeling with most of the people that have put some kind of system in place years ago. Everything is good. Dan will tell you not everything is good for a lot of those systems. And so I think the question is back to the people that own the programs. Have you checked in? Are you audit ready? Have we looked at what are they going to see when they get here? I think that's the question the mobility people ought to be asking. And quite frankly, as mobility is becoming more of a strategy and less of a program, this is something where mobility people can grab in and say, hey, I've got great compliance bones and great empathy for working with people. This is an area to get more interested in.
Okay, we've got a question that's come in from Lucy Chittenden. Now, she's been, and I think this is to do with the fact we were talking earlier about how you can use the data for other purposes to get information. And she said this: how do you address the data privacy regulations, e.g. GDPR, where certain data can only be used for the purpose for which it was originally requested or intended when it comes to reporting out with that talent data? So how do we get around that, assuming we get all that data in?
Brian, number one, we're GDPR compliant in terms of how we use it. And then it really comes down to country by country by country and how different privacy rules and regulations are interpreted. I think Poland is probably the most interesting jurisdiction at the moment because they've got some very strict employment law guidelines on the information that can actually be stored. So, for example, in Poland, doing right to work, it's very much like in the US where you have to get on a video call, a Teams call, whatever it happens to be, and somebody has to sit there and say, here's a picture of my passport and it's next to me and this is my face. And so the privacy laws there make it very challenging to actually store that documentation. What we do is we say we've stored a process. So we've gone through and stored it, but we can't actually take on board, for example, passport numbers or blue card numbers in Poland. So we are GDPR compliant in terms of what we store and how we use that information. But then there are certain countries, as I said, Poland, where it's a whole nother level because of employment law legislation and what we can and can't do with it.
But I think it's a great question to be asked. And it's another example of this stuff is not simple, right? So everybody's oversimplified it, in my opinion, for a couple decades. And there's a lot of nuance to it. And that's why we, again, are interested, because there's a lot of nuance. We want to make sure we're helping you get it right. And the name WorkRight was very thoughtfully taken, is we really want to help our clients make sure that they are doing all these aspects of, do you have the right to X, and get those answers right. So, but it's a very keen observation that we take very seriously.
I mean, it's amazing what you've put together, and kudos to you guys for developing this technology. What about the future? I mean, Robert, what excites you most about compliance? I can't believe I actually asked that question. What excites you most about compliance? Of course, I never thought I'd ask. But going forward, let me finish. What excites you most about innovation in compliance?
Just the constant change, right? The constant, I've always been excited by technology. I've always been excited about what's next. I think you know that. I think you and I share that great love.
Absolutely.
But I think that the evolving nature of this and the evolving importance, why am I most excited right now? Because of compliance, people are putting teeth behind compliance. So you don't do it just because you want to be a good actor. You're doing it because you want to be a good actor. It's the right thing to do. And people are holding you accountable for it, right? So if you take that, so I broaden it to more reg tech, if you will, regulatory technology, that we're fitting into where we feel it's really important for the employer and helping the employee meet that at a simplistic place. So simplification, what we all talk about all the time, but without giving up on the nuances. So you don't have to do it with compromise. You don't have to be compromising this because we don't think anybody will care. We're going to help you be compliant everywhere and answer all those questions. And by the way, I think AI is only going to help us. It will hurt us too, because other people will be, there's the other side of the sword, right? So you have to constantly be keeping up. And I think we see great opportunity, because I think this is an area where you really need a specialist. Don't just plug in somebody that may have access to information. The vast amounts of information we have as a firm and data, I think, sets us apart. So future in AI, digitization, government interaction, so the integrations with government, all those things are off, not too far down the roadmap. But if the picture I always see in my head is the Tom Cruise peeling the mask off his head after he's faked everybody out that he was somebody else with somebody else's voice, and that's what we're up against.
Just bring down the conversation. Do you think that the enforcement pressures that we're seeing are going to intensify, or do you think we're at peak enforcement at the moment?
No, I think there's I think there's much more enforcement to come. Like if I just starting with the U.S., there was a huge budgetary increase for the Department of Homeland Security that was passed just this summer, and that's going to take a while for that money to flow into new auditors and new agents and new enforcement folks, right? I've talked to people at DHS who they're rapidly trying to scale back or scale up their kind of I-9 enforcement arms, which had kind of died out in the previous administration because there wasn't much enforcement. And so I think, in 2026 and 2027 is when we're really going to see, a much even more dramatic rise in enforcement in this area.
Okay, we're getting up to the last few minutes. I'm going to try and keep things a bit short here. But Robert, what is the key takeaway you want people to take away from this show? What's the key message that you want to get out there?
Don't assume that everything's being done right. Go ask. Go inquire with other people in your organization. Try to bring what that potential problem is, because it's a big problem if it becomes a big deal. The C-suite doesn't even think about this. So go ask and develop the narrative to get people's attention. It's worthy.
So find out. I mean, you raised a very interesting point that a lot of mobility professionals won't even necessarily know who is actually doing this work elsewhere in their organizations. They need to find out where it is, who's doing it, and find a way of opening those channels, those conversations, and obviously explaining that they've got a knowledge of immigration issues and right to work issues, which maybe others don't have.
I guarantee there's percolating liability to every one of the organizations we're talking about here, and that it is not something that is being thought of actively as one of those areas that could really explode. So do it with the best of intentions and as gracefully as possible, but it's a great area to kind of dig into.
Okay, and
you shouldn't ever ask me for the short answer.
And so I'm going to throw that over to Darren, actually. So, and it's like, if you could leave mobility professionals with one action to take tomorrow to future-proof some of the compliance issues, what would that one action be?
I'll simplify Robert's answer, where I think he was trying to say, go back and have the discussion internally to find out where the accountability sits. Just have the discussion. Who owns what? Okay.
And one very last question, and again for you, Darren, is what's the long-term outlook? Where's WorkRight Global going? And what's it going to look like in, say, 5 years' time?
Yeah, and that's a short answer at the end of it. Thanks for that. All-encompassing.
You've got 90 seconds, Darren. Go for it.
I think it's all-encompassing. And look, I'll come back to something I said at the start. WorkRight suddenly brings in everybody who commences with your organisation. It doesn't matter where they are or where they're from. Everybody who comes into your organisation has to go through some form of WorkRight employment verification check. So what it does is it brings everybody onto a level playing field. Compliance is going to continue to improve the same way that we've seen business traveller compliance around business traveller improve or accelerate in countries around the world. I think we're going to see this open up country after country after country because of all the issues that we've talked about today. So I just think as long as organisations can understand who owns it inside their organisation, work out a process, a solution that's going to protect them and their organisation, I think they'll be fine. But it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay, well, thank you all so very much. I'm going to bring it back, the wonderful Tally, onto our stage. I don't think you're expecting that. So that's the end of our show. We are back next week when we're going to be talking about From RMC to Revolution, the future of relocation services and mobility technology. Many thanks to Susanna Ramirez from Honeywell and Julie Onslow-Cole, who both had to leave us for other meetings. And especially a big, big thanks to Robert Horsley, Darren Gibson, and Dan Brown from Fragomen WorkRight for really opening up a whole new sector, a whole new area for us in the mobility professional. And I'll tell you what, this might be the first time we've covered it. I'm sure it will not be the last by any means. I'm Brian Friedman. This has been The View from the Top. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week. And don't forget to submit your nominations for the top 100 list. Take care, everybody, and have a great week.
Bye.